to corruption.
Welcome back to Show Me State News. I'm Kermit D, and today we bring you a special report on the alarming series of inmate deaths at the South Central Correctional Center in Licking, Missouri. Over the past 2 years, multiple inmates have lost their lives under suspicious circumstances, raising concerns about the safety and security within the facility.
In the last month or so, we've had 2 that were definitely drug-related and 1 this most recent possibly. So more interventions need to be done.
Tuesday night, 46-year-old Michael Hudson died at the South Central Correctional Center in Licking, Missouri. That makes the 8th death at the jail this year.
The drug screen was positive for both fentanyl and carfentanil. And for me, to have 2 specific types of fentanyl is almost like a signature for a batch, possibly.
These 3 deaths, Alan Lancaster, Logan Ross, and Bronson Vestal, were positive for fentanyl. But not every death is drug-related this year. These men died from other causes. Nathan Emery, Wayne Johnston, Roderick Stevenson, and Lanny Sunderland.
Although there have been several deaths, up until July 27th, last month, none of the deaths were drug-related.
But the drugs are showing up again in drug screens. But the drugs are showing up again in drug screens.
Among the inmates who tragically passed away were Michael Hudson, John Thompson, and Alan Lancaster. These individuals were serving sentences for various crimes, but their deaths remain shrouded in mystery. Our investigation reveals a disturbing pattern. We have uncovered evidence linking the deaths of these inmates to the presence of illegal drugs within the prison walls. But how did these drugs find their way into the hands of the inmates?
I worked there from 2016-2017. There has always been corruption, and it's worse now. There's some good correction officers, they're trying to do their jobs for lousy pay. But there are also many officers in charge that are involved. That's the reason I quit. It's a horrible place to work.
Believe me, I worked there in 2016-2017. There are too many things going on and money being made. The officers in charge are also involved. Lousy pay and unsafe working conditions is the reason I quit. It's a horrible place to work. And the director of prisons in Missouri and Preside does nothing about it. The whole prison system in Missouri is a complete mess. Do not go to work for any of them if you value your life and family.
I witnessed firsthand the rampant drug trade. Inside the South Central Correctional Center, it was like a marketplace, with drugs being exchanged right under the noses of the correctional officers.
Our sources have provided us with shocking details of how drugs were smuggled into the facility. It appears that some former correctional officers were involved in this illicit operation. One of the individuals implicated in this scandal is Paige Cook, a former correctional officer who was arrested for intending to bring illegal drugs into the prison. Cook claimed to have received these drugs from an inmate's uncle, but the investigation is ongoing.
Involved in this, and so it goes beyond her, and we want to find the absolute supply of this and terminate the supply.
We have reason to believe that Cook was not acting alone. Our investigation has led us to another former employee, Michael Lonsky, who has been sentenced to prison on drug charges. Lonsky's involvement in the drug trade within the prison is deeply concerning. Michael Lonsky, a former employee of the prison in Licking, Missouri, had been released from custody on a $250,000 bond prior to being sentenced. His official charge is felony delivery of a controlled substance except 35 grams or less of marijuana or synthetic cannabinoid. According to online court documents, Lonsky was indicted by a grand jury on October 14, 2022. On May 2, 2023, he pleaded guilty to the charges and was subsequently sentenced on July 7, 2023, and has been sentenced to serve 6 years incarcerated in the Missouri Department of Corrections. Additionally, he is required to pay court costs and a fine of $24,000. This case highlights the ongoing efforts to combat the smuggling of contraband into correctional facilities and the consequences individuals face when engaging in such illegal activities.
The question arises, how did these drugs go undetected by the prison authorities? Our sources suggest that there may have been a lack of proper security measures and oversight, allowing the drug trade to flourish within the facility. The inmate deaths and the involvement of correctional officers in drug smuggling highlight the urgent need for comprehensive prison reform. We must address the systemic issues that allow corruption to thrive within our correctional facilities. Lori Curry is the director of Missouri Prison Reform. Her goal through the organization is to hold Missouri Department of Corrections accountable and transparent. In communicating with the incarcerated and their families, she has learned about so much they are hiding. And this is what Missouri Prison Reform founder Lori Curry had to say.
We tell their stories a lot of times and communicate with them about what's going on in the Missouri State Prison facilities. I also communicate with family members and try to help them navigate this life and advocate for their loved ones who are incarcerated, as well as communicate with the Missouri Department of Corrections. The organization's biggest problem is that the Missouri Department of Corrections isn't that transparent with their information, and it's a fight to get the information we need. They lie to the public. That's the truth. I do a lot on social media because they just will ignore family members' concerns until it's out there and people are paying attention. Especially the media. If the media gets a hold of something, then they'll do something about it. So I've worked really hard for the last year and a half forming relationships with the media and building a social media presence so people are paying attention, then they will act. The organization also actively processes sunshine law requests to get information from the doc that they don't want to hand over. I do a sunshine request once a week for all the deaths in the Department of Corrections. I started doing that to keep them honest about the Rona 1923 in the facilities and the number of deaths they were having. I continued to do that because there are sometimes deaths that are suspicious, and by doing that I have a list of people who have died in the facilities. We hear from mothers of people in prison, wives, children. There are a lot of people in the system with addiction, so this is a really scary time to have someone incarcerated. I want to see more staff searches to prevent contraband from getting into facilities and better health care to prevent medical issues. It's frustrating that deaths are increasing so rapidly.
This is the Missouri's Department of Corrections Director Ann Precythe and spokeswoman Karen Poyman, the warden of the Licking, Missouri location Michelle Buckner, and the head of all prisons in Missouri Governor Mike Parsons. This is Karen Poyman, spokeswoman for the Missouri Department of Corrections, and here is what she had to say.
The majority of deaths are from natural causes. In Missouri, the major causes of death are the same inside and outside prisons: heart disease and cancer. Over this time period, doc staff across Missouri were both fired and arrested for bringing drugs into MDOC facilities. But no arrests were made in Licking. Problems like addiction, and in particular the opioid epidemic that affect Missouri communities, also impact prisoners. Problems that affect Missouri communities as a whole also affect state prisons. Drug overdoses are the leading cause of death for Missourians ages 18 to 44. The Missouri prison system has programs aimed at overcoming addiction, but inmates must commit to recovery. Accidental deaths such as Hebert's have more than tripled since 2018, when less than 6% of deaths were considered accidental. But that rate skyrocketed in 2021 and 2022 to 20%. Of the known causes of death from January through June of this year, 72.3% were classified as natural, 19.1% were accidental, 6.3% were a result of executions, and 2.1% were suicides. All of the accidental deaths so far this year have been from overdoses. The department is committed to keeping dangerous contraband out of prisons, but there are many ways it can get in, including through visitors, vendors, attorneys, and correction staff, among other situations. That the department is addressing substance abuse issues by expanding treatment options as well as access to Narcan, which can reverse an opioid overdose.
MDOC says it would be virtually impossible to prevent something as small as a lethal dose of fentanyl from getting inside. Governor Mike Parson oversees the prisons. We asked his office if there's any plan to investigate the offender deaths at SKC. His office said the governor has complete confidence in DOC Director Ann Precythe, adding that Governor Parson is in communication with Director Precythe and all cabinet members on a regular basis. Our investigation has also uncovered the devastating impact of these inmate deaths on their families and loved ones. The loss of a family member under such circumstances is a tragedy that cannot be ignored.
It's just too much. It shouldn't have happened. My son was in solitary confinement. His thing came back saying he had this horse tranquilizer in his system. How? He did tell me, he called me one day and he's like, Mom, it's a lot of guys in here passing away. They dying. And I was like, well, you know, you don't have that long. You don't affiliate with them. If they told me he died from somebody stabbing him, okay. But for him to have this type of drug in his system, Alan didn't do drugs. They said they don't know. Nobody's talking. Nobody's saying nothing. Well, somebody's responsible for it. They put homicide. Somebody's responsible. I just need to know, like, somebody did something to him. I know, because he would not do this. I'm not having it. I'm going to find out, though.
As we continue to dig deeper into this story, we call for transparency and accountability from the Missouri Department of Corrections. The public deserves to know the truth about what has been happening within the South Central Correctional Center. Thank you for joining us on this journey of uncovering the dark web of drugs, inmate deaths, and corruption at the South Central Correctional Center. Stay tuned for further updates as we strive to shed light on this troubling issue. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to Show Me State News for more investigative journalism that matters.